record here. All right, to Liberty Expert Nation, it's your boy Tim Moen back for more. I've taken a bit of a break, but I'm back. You'll notice today that David is missing. David has gone off to pursue his PhD. So I'm relaunching this website. I don't know if I'll stay with the name Liberty Experts or we'll go to another name, but you know, I've just kind of been trying to decide what my next direction is. And it looks like my next direction may have found me, because there's a big fight going on right now in Alberta. We're going to talk with a gentleman who's involved in that fight and who has inspired me to join the fight. And we're going to get his story. And but as usual, you know, make sure you just tap that like and subscribe button, share. Make sure you stay updated with a subscription. You'll get notified every time a new podcast episode drops, and we'll go from there. So my guest today is Brian. Brian is a firefighter paramedic just like me, and he is going to tell his story and explain why we are joining forces with a bunch of other firefighter paramedics and frontline health personnel to take Alberta Health Services to task and stop their vaccine mandate against their employees. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, Brian, let's get right into it. Tell us your story. What's going on?
Okay, I'm on modified work duties right now. I was injured at a fire in October 2020. I underwent a lot of testing, developed some bizarre symptoms in the days after a large apartment complex fire. Started in my hands and my wrists, my forearms, everything was seizing up. I told my wife, I feel like the Tin Man. Nothing would work. My range of motion. Went to see my doctor. He drew my CK level, my creatinine kinase. It was quite elevated at the time. He repeated it in 3 days and it had more than doubled again. So I was immediately put off work, and that's where the investigation started. I underwent testing for the next 6 months. It wasn't until, let's get my dates right here. Testing, muscle biopsy, MRIs, blood work every 2 weeks. Procedures called EMG studies, nerve conductions tests. In May of this year, I was finally diagnosed after seeing the second neuromuscular specialist. And he connected my symptoms to the apartment complex fire. The fire was on the 9th of October. The first CK level was drawn on October 13th, 4 days after the fire, and immediately called this something. He called it hypoxic rhabdomyolysis. And he said, essentially, he compared me to, say, a long distance runner who pushed themselves beyond their limits. The muscles start to go into a breakdown mode. In my case, it was just working fire, typical working fire, lots of activity. Everybody's busy, you know. I mean, you've been there, Tim. You know what it's like to work fire and a large apartment complex fire. So just lots of activity over an extended period of time. We were on scene for 5.5 hours till we returned to the station, and exertion related is what I'm told. My engine came in downwind of this fire to secure an intersection and block an intersection. In my mind, I'm convinced that I was exposed to something in those 15 minutes or so at the start of the fire that set the stage for this rhabdomyolysis, working that fire for an additional 5 hours. My muscles in my legs and my hands just started breaking down. And so I've been undergoing rehab for quite some time now. I'm told by the specialist that it does take time. Your muscles develop memory and won't let you go beyond that. I deal with fatigue issues daily. Still deal with primarily lower legs, muscular issues, cramping, stiffness, decreased range of motion, and fatigue. Those are my big things. Right. Recently, get the email from my employer saying that I need to show proof of vaccination status.
Right. Well, let me stop you there. I want to explore your story a little bit more before we get
Sure.
into what our fight's about, because I think it's important. This is something that firefighters face in our profession. We take on this duty to risk our body and our health for our community, and we put ourselves in harm's way. That's how we're wired. We are there to serve our community, look after their safety, look after their health, protect the community from death and destruction, and we put ourselves in harm's way because of that. And we know that there's a lot of unknown risks that we face. We've found out in the past few years, for example, that firefighter cancers in firefighters are extremely high, and that we, throughout the years of exposures to God knows what carcinogens, and they haven't identified all the hazards out there, that we pay a health effect for this. And here you are, you are facing serious health effects because of this job you do of protecting the community. And so, it's troubling to say the least that, first of all, you're in this position and having to recover from this terrible, kind of almost mysterious thing that is no doubt related to your job, and the hazards that you face. So bring us now to the next step, which is, okay, because I remember, Brian, you were kind of in my camp where, like, I remember back in like December, they were talking about rolling out the vaccine, making the vaccine available to healthcare workers, and we weren't included in that cohort. They were going to push us off until later in the year. They didn't consider us frontline workers, I guess, or something like that. So guys like you and me, we were fighting to say, hey, make this available to us so that we can protect ourselves on the job. We're going into uncontrolled situations where we're going into viral loads where we don't know what the ramifications of that are. And so you were actually kind of looking forward to getting the shot and fighting for us to have it available. But I can imagine that one of the reasons, and maybe you tell me, why didn't you take the shot when it was immediately available? I can guess why, but
amongst my symptoms, I would wake up every morning with a runny nose, watering eyes, sneezing. My immune system seemed to be activated, and I wasn't on a 24-hour clock. My day was like 22 hours, so my clock was constantly reverting, turning backwards. And so my day would start at 5 a.m. and then 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 2 a.m. I'd be sitting here at the table at 1 a.m. in the morning, having a cup of coffee and working on a puzzle, trying to be as quiet as possible, sneezing and dealing with the morning routine. So my immune system was charged every morning, and I didn't understand why. I still don't have a satisfactory explanation why. But at the time, I thought there's just no way I can take this shot, not really understanding what's going on in my rehabilitation. I wasn't even diagnosed at that point, January, February. So I absolutely wasn't comfortable in taking the shot then. And there really was no need for me. I wasn't on the front lines anymore. And if I was on the front line, I probably would have been like a lot of my peers, my coworkers who were first in line, because they had no reason not to take the shot and protect themselves against.
Right.
I mean, we've learned a lot now. We're in early October 2021. There's a lot more information available right now as compared to January, February this year when these shots first became available.
Sure.
And if you ask me, knowing now what I knew then, would I do it? The answer might not be the same.
Right.
But at the time, knowing what I knew January, February, I would have done the same thing most of my peers have already done, and that is jab.
Right. And so, I mean, obviously you're suffering from this mysterious ailment. You're wiped out. Your immune system is compromised, adding the stress of going through a vaccine and knowing, from our coworkers and from myself, it wasn't exactly fun especially getting that second shot. It wipes you out. Compound those symptoms onto what you're already facing. And I can understand why you would be hesitant or not want to take it during during your recovery. And I think it's important for viewers also to understand that Brian and myself are not just firefighters, we're also paramedics. So that means, you know, we spend, well, in my case, 50% of the time on the ambulance, 50% of the time on the fire truck. And so this is where I guess the story brings us, you know, is that as when we are working on the ambulance, our employer is the city. In my case, it's the county of Strathcona. In your case, it's the city of Lethbridge. And so those are our employers. Our fight isn't with our employers per se. Our fight is with AHS because we are contracted to Alberta Health Services to provide ambulance services. So the time when we're on the ambulance, we are working essentially for AHS as contractors. And so let's bring it now to present. What's the deal? Why are we launching this?
We are looking for an alternative, honestly. The guys with my department right now that are still holding out, and we're losing guys by the day because there's a lot of pressure being put upon these guys to comply with this mandate, whether the pressure is directly from the employer or from accessing city services or enrolling their kids in minor league hockey. The pressure is ramping up for my coworkers, my peers, to comply with this order. All we're asking for is an alternative. Can we, like other city workers, undergo rapid testing daily so that we prove to our employer and to AHS that we're showing up fit for duty and free of COVID at the start of our shift? We're not asking for anything more than anyone else is being offered. So not just for paramedics, I think across the board, AHS employees, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sure most AHS guys, men and women, would be satisfied with an alternative to the jab at this point.
Yeah, I mean that there's, our employers, the departments we work for, the cities we work for, they have a policy for their employees, with the exclusion of us, that they can choose vaccination or rapid testing, right? As long as the employer knows that you're not contagious when you come to work, that's good enough for them. And that's ultimately, Brian, what this vaccine policy, I believe the principle behind it is that you're indicating that you're not a threat when you come to work. And of course, showing documentation and a test that you're not contagious is probably even better than getting vaccinated, because we know that vaccinated people can still get and spread the virus, maybe not to the same extent as the unvaccinated, but they can still be disease vectors. And so I'm vaccinated. I may not get any symptoms if I get, and I could be a carrier. And so I could be unknowingly spreading it around work. And so your option of getting rapid tested makes you actually a safer employee, safer healthcare provider than I am. And all you're asking for is the choice, right? They're coming at you with the jab. They're saying you must be penetrated and have this ejaculate put in you. I mean, maybe that's a crass way of putting it, but it's, you generally, when we consider penetration and squirting something into a body, we generally ask for consent. If there's any element of coercion there, society generally frowns upon that. Even if it's pressure, even if it's like peer pressure or something like that, we generally frown on that. And so,
I haven't quite heard it put that way before, Tim, but thanks for that. Right.
And the reason I'm joining the fight is I've got coworkers here that I work with that are essentially being made social pariahs right now. I mean, this is a hugely politically divisive issue, and it's on both sides. I mean, we face the anti-vax mobs when we go to the ambulance, and our ambulances have been spit on by deplorable people, and we've had mobs of vaccine protesters chase us down and have to evacuate scenes. Like, it's ugly out there on both sides. And on this side, it's that these guys show up for work and they're the brunt of talk and like being looked down upon by certain people in our department. But ultimately, it's AHS and the government that is sowing this division. And these guys, I mean, these are the most stand-up guys. These are guys that are on our peer support teams that were selected in previous years by our peers because they were a shoulder to cry on when we were suffering mental health problems and having a tough time at work. And these guys would go out of their way, give you the shirt off their back and be there. And now for some reason, they're social pariahs after they've sacrificed so much for their brothers. And so I want to stand up for them. But more than that, I want to stand up for bodily autonomy, for choice here. People shouldn't feel forced to comply with, secede their bodily autonomy in order to be employed, especially when this employer, and I mean, this is the crux of our constitutional case that we'll get to, which is that, look, imagine there's a business in town that violently enforces their monopoly, okay? That they say that we're the only business, we're only going to allow us to provide this service, and they shut down forcibly every other business that works for them. They're the sole service provider. Well, that sole service provider can't then say that it can discriminate against people, and that this is the argument on the side of service provision by the government. Government can't discriminate against people the way I can discriminate against people in my home. I can say, you're not allowed to come in here for X, Y, for any arbitrary reason I want. I can keep you off my property and in theory, keep you out of my business. It's a private business. I can choose who to associate with. The government doesn't have that right. It gave up that right when it said, I'm enforcing a monopoly on this. No one else is allowed to do that. You and I, Brian, we can't start competing ambulance services. We can't start a community care paramedic business. My wife and I and my kids, who are all healthcare workers, we thought about starting like a home care business at the start of this pandemic. I had done a year's worth of research and prep work and had AHS shut us down. We're not allowed to do that. We're forced to only work for this one employer. So I have no other options of who to work for or what to do other than provide healthcare services by working for the government. And so they have to make reasonable provisions for us. Yes, we should have to show up to work safe. And if we can do that, I mean, they should have no issue with, they shouldn't be allowed to discriminate against us. And so we're saying we can do that. And so right now, yeah, I like this vaccine. I took it myself. But we're now opening up the door where I might not like the next vaccine. I might not want to get boosters for the rest of my life if eventually I'm going to get COVID and recover from it. At that point, I'm probably good. Like, I don't need any more shots being jabbed in me. And what's the next thing to come down the pike? Are they going to make us get a vaccine for the common cold or for influenza or for God knows what? Going on and on ad infinitum. So this is a bigger issue than just this one instance right now. My job isn't threatened the way yours is and the way many other people's are, but it will be threatened in the past. If you don't think they're coming for you folks, yeah. For having bodily autonomy, they will eventually erode that bodily autonomy down to nothing where they, so that's my concern. That's where I'm fighting from.
Totally agree, Tim. It's Pandora's box, and when we open this up, where does it end?
Right. All right. So let's get into what we're doing about it. Talk a little bit about how we're organizing and what we're looking for.
Okay. There's a core group of us here in my department that kind of banded together and retained a lawyer. We've retained a constitutional lawyer. Our union, as unions across the board, really didn't take exception with these mandates. They had consulted their lawyers. As it turns out, they're labor lawyers. From a labor lawyer perspective, there's nothing wrong with the employer making a mandate like this and requiring us to comply. So from a labor lawyer perspective, the union said, there's nothing we can do. There's no fight for us. We approached a constitutional lawyer who said, this is absolutely illegal. This is completely, there's lawlessness right across the board in Canada, in the United States right now. And we've even heard from a judge who says she just needs it to cross her desk. This is absolutely illegal, what's happening at a constitutional level. And so while we may have collective agreements between the union and the employer, the Constitution supersedes that. So we do have a valid argument. We do have a constitutional lawyer. And the letter is going out this week coming to Alberta Health requesting that for those of us, for our own reasons, who've chosen not to be vaccinated from COVID at this point, that we be given the option to do rapid testing on a 72-hour cycle, a daily cycle, even whatever it takes, so that we can prove we're showing up to work healthy and ready to go every day, but not to have to take the jab at this point.
Right. And Brian, how can they possibly make you, a guy who is still getting wiped out and you know, suffering fatigue and suffering issues, force you right now at this point to take it? You know what I mean? Like this is unreal. It's like, well, you know, they could say something like, well, there's no evidence that it's good. Well, you don't even know you couldn't even diagnose what was going wrong with Brian.
Oh.
And now you're going to tell us that he's completely safe taking it when you don't even know what's going on, when you're just barely figuring it out and you don't have a clear path for recovery for you. There's no medicine you can take or like thing you can do that's going to cure you. You just have to kind of rely on your body and your own judgment here. And now they're taking away your own judgment and saying you must be vaccinated right now. Right now. You can't wait. You can't wait. We're not going to do it. And the other thing, you know, is look, a lot of these people, you know, I know that if back in January they said this is a mandate, you will take this or you will lose your job. Shit, I'd be pretty hesitant to take it. I'd be like, dudes, put down your gun and like persuade me, have a conversation with me.
Yeah,
but until you put down your gun, I can't listen to reason and evidence. You may have all the reason and evidence on your side. Use it instead of that damn gun, and then we can talk. So right now, all we're saying is AHS, lower your gun. Now talk. Now, you know, reread Aesop's fable about the north wind and the sun, and understand how the sun gets a person to take the jacket off more than blowing a stiff cold wind at them does. And then maybe you get somewhere with us. In the meantime, we're happy to come to work safe. We're happy to show you that we're not contagious. I know some of the members in this group have recovered from COVID. They've got antibody tests that prove that they are immune to this, probably more than I am.
Yeah.
Why should they have to prove? What more
Doesn't
do
make
they
sense.
have to prove?
Does
right?
not
And
make
so,
sense.
and so, listen, if you're listening to this and you're a frontline healthcare worker like us, whether you work for AHS or you're a contract employer, go to frontline.com. The link will be down below in the YouTube notes. You can there's an email there. You can send us an email saying you need legal help, and you can join our fight and join our cause. We're going to have to do a bunch of fundraising, and if you support our cause, I encourage you also to go to the webpage, sign up to be just for regular updates. We're going to need all hands on board and for this, and you know, whether you can donate some money or whether you can support our cause by sharing the link and getting our story out. All of that is connect us with a media person, or maybe you have some skills, like you know how to do e-commerce and run a web page, and you know we're figuring all this stuff out on the fly, and we can use a hand. But this is growing very fast. You know, we launched our website yesterday. We're getting supporters, a steady stream of supporters coming in. We're going to be launching a media blitz next week, hopefully, when this letter drops. And we could use your help. So I encourage you to get involved. And, you know, I have a feeling, Brian, that once you know, I've had a lot of questions from people. Why aren't you fighting to end all the mandates and fighting for this group and that group and the next group? This is all coming from the government. There's no way that in a sensible free market, without all this establishment coercion, that we would have this homogenous set of rules for everyone that all businesses are enforcing. Okay, this is coming from one place, and that's the government, and in Alberta that's AHS. And so once we take this down, I suspect it's going to change the tune of a lot of other people. So I think this will have a domino effect, and hopefully it'll be the first domino to fall, and then a whole bunch more will fall after that. So yes, we may not be mounting a legal battle for every citizen in Alberta. We're targeting specifically people that are in our situation with AHS, but I think that this is the target we go after, and then more dominoes will fall.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thanks so much for sharing our story. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing your face a lot more in the coming weeks, and we couldn't ask for a better spokesperson for our cause. So good luck and Godspeed, and hopefully, people hear your story and support our cause.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All right.